Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I'm your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of things with microphones because I am a ring announcer, and I am joined this week, as I always am, by my two buddies who talk MMA things smartly. Introducing first, from New York, he's all in black tonight, ready to bring the heat. He's Mark Prio. What's up, man?
What's up? I was saying to Omar while we were waiting for you that I had a couple weeks there where my camera, or my lighting, I should say, was behaving normally, and now I'm back to being under the bright lights. So oh well, but yeah, I'm pumped for this episode. I guess I'll leave the intro to you, but we are finally getting to do one of the things that we've kind of always wanted to do on here. We're always so busy,
fun things,
with the recaps and the previews, and we're kind of doing a fun one at least for the first half of this show tonight.
Yeah, man.
So I'm pumped.
All right, and now introducing from Florida, the Sunshine State, he is the Nicaraguan nightmare, Omar Artola. Say hi.
Gentlemen, what's going on? Your boy's in a little bit of pain, so if you see me wincing from time to time, that's what's going on. Nothing, Omar.
Is this blue pain or red pain? I heard somebody say that once.
What does that mean?
Like
what in the Jake Paul is that?
I like good pain or bad pain. I don't know. It's stupid. That's why I said it.
It's a pulsing pain, and I'm pretty sure there's something growing on my leg right now. So,
that doesn't sound great.
It's not great.
So not Muay Thai related?
Oh no, it's Muay Thai related.
Oh, okay. Yeah. By something growing, you mean like a bruise or like a hematoma?
Yes. Correct.
Swelling.
I kicked a knee. I kicked a knee, and I shouldn't have.
Mark, what are you drinking?
And sucks.
The usual quick cocktail that I make for this show, which is just bourbon and some lemonade.
I also make a cocktail. It's really involved. I pour whiskey into a glass.
That's
great.
I feel like going straight whiskey during this show would run the risk of like a headache while I'm trying to do all this talking. So
you would get a headache in the middle of the show from whiskey?
I just feel like if I'm sipping straight whiskey sometimes, like after a bit, my head starts to be like, why do I keep sipping straight whiskey?
Oh, really?
And I don't want to have that feeling in the middle of the show. Why, you feel nothing?
I feel great. That's what I feel. I do try to take my time because I'm not a big drinker. I've never been a big drinker. Like I've never been one to like try to get drunk from drinking all the time. But I drink.
Oh, dude, I'm
every night almost.
So far past
I usually have
that
like wine
level
with
of
dinner
life.
and stuff like that.
Same.
That's the only reason I want to drink. If I ever have to drink, it's because I'm trying to get fucked up. That's it.
I'm the opposite.
Ever since I
drink often
kids,
and I hate getting fucked up.
Ever since I had kids, that stopped because as soon as I had a kid, I didn't like the idea of like that I might be too off if I got like a call that something was happening.
Oh, sure.
Like, say I was out drinking with people, that I couldn't be like, boom, all right, I'm in the car. Like, I didn't like that I had that potential. So I feel like from the time I had a kid, I like just drank casually.
All right. Guys, is this a show about spirits?
We cover every topic to start the show. Sometimes it's weather. Sometimes it's
true.
alcohol. We have our go-tos.
But this is primarily an MMA show. It's not and new cocktail show.
Not yet.
All right, folks. We are going to rank the greatest female MMA fighters of all time. So Mark, Omar, and myself have each come up with our own top 10 lists for this. And we are going to dive in, compare, contrast, possibly argue, possibly be baffled with one another, defend our positions and our ranks, and we're going to have some fun in the process. Then we're going to find out what's going on in the world of MMA and the headlines and whatnot with our segment Inside the MMA Sphere with Omar. And then we're going to look ahead to this weekend. We have two events, UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Spivac, and Bellator 290, which is headlined by Fedor 2. What did I say?
Fedor?
Fedor 2. Fedor and Fedor. That's what it is. Cool. Before we get into any fight talk, guys, and any rankings, let us first thank our audience. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you haven't done so yet, if you've been liking the content that we've been putting out there, please consider subscribing to our channel. Hit the bell icon so that you never miss a video. If you're watching this right now, give us a thumbs up because that is free for you and helps our channel grow. And the thing that might make our channel grow the most, and the part that we love the most, is when you guys leave thoughtful comments below. If you agree with any of our takes, and especially if you disagree with any of our takes, let us know down in the comments with your own takes. If you want the audio-only version of the show, we've got you there. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, find us on social media. You can find us in all of the places at @andnew_MMA show. If you want to email us, you can email us andnewmmashow@gmail.com as well. There you have it. Okay. There's no name on the marquee this week because we are not recapping any fights. So, gentlemen, let us begin our ranking of the top 10 greatest female MMA fighters of all time.
So I just want to say one thing real fast. So we have agreed here, this is an open weight ranking, as Mike alluded to, but we have agreed to exclude atomweight. So if you're listening and you have some atomweight favorite that you're hoping to hear, you're not going to hear it. We're going to use the weight classes that have existed within the UFC. We're not only going to consider the UFC, but those are the weight classes we're going to use, 115 through 145. And I don't think there has ever been a unanimously agreed upon top 10 ranking of anything in the history of life. So I know some of you guys are going to disagree with what you hear today. So get in the comments. We want to hear the takes. We want to hear why you disagree or why you like something that someone chose to do. We want to have the engagement. So comment your takes for sure as you're listening to this.
Yeah. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go up our rankings. So we're going to end with our number one pick. So we're going to split it up, first 5 and second 5. So we're going to start with our rankings 10 through 6, and then we'll probably talk and be shocked with one another. And then we'll do rankings 5 through 1. Who would like to go first?
So we're going to start with some honorable mentions, though.
Okay. Sure.
So,
well, whoever goes first, before you get into number 10, do your honorable mentions.
Well, we can make them a little. We'll take a pause after the three of us after the honorable mentions. I think.
Oh, okay.
That's what we had said.
Let's do it.
All right. Who wants to start this thing off?
I'll do some honorable mentions.
Okay. Go for it.
So my first honorable mention is Megumi Fuji. I couldn't put her in my top 10 because I don't think she's ever really won a championship of any kind that matters. I think the one time that she had the opportunity to win a belt, she lost. She's only lost 3 times in her career. Really good record, has beaten some really good names, finished some good names. So I had her in my honorable mentions, but again, she never really wore gold, so I was hard pressed to put her in a top 10 list. Next is Gina Carano, another person with kind of a crazy record when you really look at it. The reality is she hit a wall called Chris Cyborg and she was done. And I don't really blame her. I don't think her skills would have translated into the modern day mixed martial arts world that women have evolved the game into. But at the heyday of her arrival, Gina Carano was that chick. And she was good. And she was vicious. Next on my list, Jessica Andrade. This was just because of where my top 10 list ended up. But the fact is Jessica Andrade could be argued in a top 10 list if you really wanted to. I would not dispute that at all. She just didn't make mine. Carla Esparza is my last honorable mention. Another one that has worn gold in multiple organizations, but she has had some losses, and her performances, I thought, should also speak a little bit for her placement. And some of her performances have left us lacking, I would imagine. So those are my 4 honorable mentions.
Okay, I have 3 honorable mentions. The first one,
Well done, Omar. I liked those.
yeah,
Thank you.
I almost said thank you as well. That's weird. I'm off to maybe I should stop drinking whiskey now. My first honorable mention is also Gina Carano. I can sort of sum up Gina Carano by saying she was kind of Ronda before Ronda. She was kind of like this breakout star in women's MMA before, but kind of like a little too early, I want to say. She was a striker who had this great skill set, and she kind of also had these kind of Hollywood leading lady looks. Like, she was really beautiful, and she has worked in film since her fighting career. So yeah, maybe she peaked a little bit too early, and like Omar alluded to, she ran into a brick wall named Chris Cyborg, who we will definitely hear from later. Second person on my honorable mentions list is Jessica Andrade, someone who has held UFC gold. She has quite a few names on her win column of her record. Not enough of any kind of a run to really justify her to go up into my rankings. She held the belt, I believe, once. She lost it immediately. She never defended a belt. But she has a great record, 24-9 as a record with 71% finish rate. She went 1-1 with Rose Namajunas, and she fought for belts a few other times. So that's why Andrade is knocking at the door of my top 10. And my last person for my honorable mentions is Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison, as dominant as she is, and as much of a star as she is right now, I kept knocking her down my list until I was like, I think she's kind of my number 11. Simply because not only has she not beaten anyone else among these all-time rankings, she hasn't fought anyone else in these all-time rankings. So for that reason alone, even though she has a fantastic 15-1 record, a 94% finish rate, she is the reigning PFL lightweight champion. What holds her back is, I believe, her lack of competition among these other greats.
She is not reigning.
Oh, not anymore.
Larissa
Well,
Pacheco
exactly.
is on the scene
that
now.
too. Thank you for the correction. Okay, Mark, you go.
All right. I too have 4 honorable mentions, and none of them have been said yet, which is interesting. I feel like mine might be controversial, but I'm gonna rattle off like a dozen names real fast, just a list of women who I feel like deserve shout outs that I felt like were next level that I could not consider.
Totally.
Are these your honorable mentions?
Yes.
Jesus
It's
fucking
literally just a
Christ.
list. I'm not going to say anything about them. But I just feel like we're doing the entire women of MMA. I want to give some love to a few other women who are
Spread the love.
kind of just next level.
You do it.
Yuka Tsuji, who was known as the Queen of Vale Tudo. Tara LaRosa, who was a pioneer. Jermaine Durandamy, Julia Budd, Liz Carmouche, Barb Honchak, Claudia Gadelia, Jessica Aguilar, Alexis Davis, Juliana Pena now, Kat Zingano.
Yeah, okay.
So, wanted to... Oh, and I skipped Raquel Pennington. I actually included her there as well. So, wanted to just give them a quick little bit of love. But into my 4 honorable mentions, who were the ones I really debated having a chance to crack my top 10. And, like I said, I think we're going to get controversial for you guys right off the bat. Holly Holm.
Okay.
Holly Holm was responsible for one of the all-time greatest moments and greatest accomplishments in the history of women's MMA, and MMA period. But her record against opponents in what I would call the upper level of women's MMA is like 5-6, maybe 6-6 if you want to push it. She only has the one finish, which is the finish. So I just didn't feel like the overall career resume, despite the obviously huge legendary moment, was enough for me to include her in my top 10 over the girls that I have in there. So she missed. The next one who missed, Miesha Tate.
Okay.
Miesha Tate fell into a very similar boat for me to Holly Holm. Obviously, she's much more of a trailblazer in women's MMA, but she was kind of up and down throughout her career, and she's very similar to Holly in that her resume is powered by one big win, which is when she choked out Holly for the title. That aside, yes, she beat Marlis Kunin, who was kind of reaching the end of her dominance at that point in time. And, of course, she's got some other solid wins. Like, I easily have her as a top 15 women's fighter ever. I'm not trying to knock her. Yeah. But I just couldn't land her in the top 10 over the girls that I ended up going with. Okay. Two left. This one was kind of my surprising one to myself. Sarah Kaufman. Obviously, I'm aware of Sarah Kaufman. I've watched her fight plenty of times. My brain hadn't considered her at this level. And then when I was kind of going through resumes, I was like, wow, this might be one of the most underappreciated OGs in women's MMA. She's 22-5. Her losses are to Pacheco at the end of her career, who's way bigger than her, Valentina, Ronda, Marlis Kunin, and the one slight outlier, Alexis Davis, but it's a trilogy, and she beat Alexis Davis the other 2 times. So that's a pretty damn good list of your only losses. Other than those, she turned back 22 women. She beat Leslie Smith twice. She beat Alexis Davis twice, as I said. She beat Carmouche. She beat Roxy in her prime. She beat Valerie Letourneau. She beat Misha Tate. So her resume stacks up big time, and I wanted to make sure she got a shout-out here, but she couldn't crack my 10. And the last one, who I imagine we may hear from you guys coming up, she didn't crack mine, is Kunin. She is one of the first greats of women's MMA. She was the name for a bit there. And I have her just missing my top 10, and it's for a couple of reasons. You try not to factor in quality of competition hugely at that point in time, but I feel like you also can't ignore it entirely. And for a bit there, her quality of competition, I would say, was not the best. And she does have a couple losses mixed in there that were kind of to lesser women. So I flip-flopped if I wanted her as my number 10 for a while. She has 20 finishes and 23 fights, which is a big factor for me. So I almost pulled the trigger, but she finished just outside of my top 10.
Okay. Do you want to just kind of round robin it and go right into your 10 through 6?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. All right, here we go. My number 10, Carla Esparza. Another one that was a surprise to me. If you asked me, a week ago when you said, let's put this together, never thought Carla Esparza would be in my top 10. And then when I looked at it, I was like, fuck, I think I got to include her. So she is a 2-time champion, obviously. I don't love her finish rate, which, again, is what almost had me flipping her and Kunin. But there were a lot of checks in Carla's corner that I could not ignore. She is a 2-time UFC champion. She won the tough tourney, which was a legit high-level tourney. It was the best woman in the world at that weight class at that point in time.
That's true.
She has beaten a girl I have higher on this list in Rose twice, even if one of those fights sucked. And on top of that, her record is 10-7 against what I'd call top-level competition. But 3 of those losses are razor-close, arguable split decisions. So that record could easily be like 13-4 if you wanted to give her all those. 12-5, however you want to play with it. It's a pretty damn good record. She's really only lost, definitively, about 4 times. And the only girls to do that to her, to definitively beat her, were Megumi Fuji, Joanna, Wei Li. 3 legends. And then one who could have been a legend and maybe who still will be, who knows, in Tatiana Suarez. So for those to be the only girls who have bested you, and you're a 2-time UFC champion, and you've got wins over Herrig, Moroz, Calvillo, Jandaroba, Grasso, Waterson, Rodriguez, Jan, and Rose twice, I couldn't leave her off the list. So I snuck Carla in as my number 10. All right, number 9. Only a 1-time champion, Jessica Andrade. I thought this was going to be a controversial inclusion, but you guys both shouted her out in your honorables, so I guess it's not as crazy as I imagined.
She's your number 9. It's not like she's in your top 5.
Yeah, I didn't know she would even get the honorable love, so I was happy to hear that. Mainly for me, it was driven by her success over multiple weight classes and her finishes. In the UFC alone, she has finished Pacheco, Joanne Wood, Kovalkiewicz, Rose, Chukagian, Calvillo, Lemos. Like, that is a crazy list of finishes
a lot of bodies.
in women's MMA.
Yep.
And that's just finished. She's also beat Raquel, Angela Hill, Gedalia, Tisha, Lauren Murphy, and others. She's got her list of quality victories is endless. And she has these wins and finishes across 3 different weight classes, including one that she didn't belong in 135, but for a while it was her only option. And yes, she's lost 7 times in the UFC, but 3 of those were when she was stuck at 135, where she didn't belong. So those aside, she's lost to Joanna, Wei Li, Rose, who she also beat, and Shevchenko. I mean, you can't have a more respectable list than that. So I got to give Jessica Andrade the flowers that I think she deserves.
Okay.
All right. Up to number 8. This is where this list got a lot easier. It was a debate what I wanted to do with 9 and 10.
With you.
I'm into a kind of trio here going forward from this point.
Okay.
My number 8 is Zhang Weili. I absolutely believe that she already deserves to be ranked this highly. Of course, she's not even done yet. She could be higher. She's already a 2-time champion. We'll see if she's able to defend it. Neither girl I've listed so far, Carla or Jessica, was able to do that. We'll see if Weili can. But she has finished Esparza. She's finished Andrade. She's finished Joanna, who she's beaten twice. Granted, one of them was a legendary war. And after a loss she took in her professional debut, she has then gone 25 fights, only losing to one single person, that being Rose Namajunas. Not to mention she has 19 finishes in those 23 wins. So you could argue that she could even slot in above Joanna, considering she's beaten her twice. I didn't go that route, and I'll explain why, but I think Weili is a strong number 8, in my opinion, on this list.
Nice.
Which leads me to Joanna. She is my number 7. A lot lower, I think, than my brain initially thought. Not a lot lower, but I think in my head going into this, I was like, she's probably number 5.
Okay.
Ended up with her at 7. It's odd to have a woman who is often called like the woman's GOAT for a period of time, all the way down at number 7, but I think it's a fair spot once I really looked at it. As great as she was, her record against other women in my top 10 was 2-5. She lost to Rose twice, who I ended up having to rank above her. She lost to Weili twice. But the reason I have her ahead of Weili is because of her championship run. It was legendary. I think you have to take into account the number of title fight victories, which was 6 for Joanna, and it was 6 in a row. She took the title from Carla. She beat Penne, Latorno, Gedalia, Kovacevic, Andrade consecutively. Simply for that stretch, that run, I had to put her at least ahead of Weili. Outside of that run, either direction, before or after, there's not a lot to hang your hat on for Joanna's career. It kind of was that run, but I think that's enough to have her at my number 7 spot. And then number 6 is Rose. Like I said, I viewed these three as kind of like a trio. I had to figure out how I wanted to stack them up. But it's Rose for me. I couldn't justify ranking Rose behind either of those girls when her record against them is 4-0. Like, yes, she's lost twice to Carla, but one was a non-fight, and the other was when Rose was still pretty raw. Yes, there's not like a ton else on Rose's resume necessarily. She has the 1-on-1 series with Jessica Andrade, of course. She's 1-on-1 with Tisha. But simply on the back of 4 title fight victories with a 4-0 record over Joanna and Weili and a finish over each one of them, I couldn't put her any lower than 6. So Rose Namajunas is my number 6.
Okay. Omar, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I can go.
Do it up, baby.
My number 10 is Holly Holm. She just scratched in there. I think a lot of what Mark talked about in his honorable mentions, I think kind of goes to why, for me, she's in the top 10. She did grab gold. Her impact in that moment was, I mean, it literally changed MMA at that point, right? As much as Ronda had changed MMA at that point for women, like Holly Holm opened the door for women to now start to spread and win and change hands in titles and so forth and so on. Ronda wasn't that monster anymore and left the game and allowed other people to kind of melt their way in. I think the impact was too severe not to include her in that situation. I do have her low on the list because she never defended her belt. And even though she does not have the most consistent win record since that point, she fights literally only the best. And it's, she has a lot of these tight decisions, which frankly, some of those losses could have been wins. Like the Ketlin Vieira loss, for example. I don't think she lost that fight. But that's the Holly Holm career. But I do think that when it comes to the greatest women of all time in the MMA world, I think she definitely is on that list. Very low on the list, but there. My number 9 is Marlos Kunin. Again, for kind of the similar reasons as far as impact is concerned, the way she fought. I don't want to give her shit for the level of competition because that was the time. If a lot of these girls had come in a lot earlier, like Chris Cyborg has been around for forever and she's been killing people for forever. And so that's why she's not number 9 and she's a lot higher. But Marlos Kunin was a beast in her day. She definitely had some weird outliers as far as people who beat her in random promotions and things like that. But she won a belt. She won a belt when UFC winning a belt was not a thing. And she defended that belt once, but still defended that belt. And then the Miesha Tate thing happened, and then we go from there. But her jiu-jitsu was definitely amongst the earliest in the game that was elite. It made her the equalizer in a lot of her fights. But she wasn't the type of woman who, like Chris Cyborg, was a specimen. This was a normal-ass woman who knew really good jiu-jitsu. And sometimes she got fucked up. And sometimes, a lot of the time, she was choking people or taking a limb. But I loved watching her fight, man. She was one of my earliest memories of MMA, was watching Marlos Kunin win and watching Miesha Tate beat her for the first time and really understanding what that meant at the time. So, number 9, Marlos Kunin. With that, number 8 comes Miesha Tate. I think her impact, especially in that specific run where she ended up fighting Marlos Kunin for the belt, she was literally the underdog in every fight. No one, I think, had her winning anything in that fight. I think it was actually reminiscent of how they kind of checked out Daniel Cormier when he first came onto the scene in the Strikeforce, in that Strikeforce heavyweight tournament where no one had heard of this guy. No one knew what he was. And here he comes in just wrecking everybody. And Miesha Tate was kind of doing that with the girls that were fighting for this Bellator tournament or Strikeforce tournament. And when she got to Marlos Kunin, no one really thought she had a chance. Marlos Kunin was Marlos Kunin. And here she goes, and she wins the belt. And she walks away with some gold. And then we get to her UFC career, can't get past Ronda Rousey on multiple occasions, but was able to win a belt off of Holly Holm in dramatic fashion. And again, another impactful moment, especially with it being UFC 200 and so on and so forth. But Miesha Tate is such a large impact. Her actual fights themselves, I think, are absolutely tenacious. The one thing you can never say about Miesha Tate is she doesn't come to fight. And I think for me, I was hard pressed not to have her in my top 10 because anytime I think of women's MMA, Miesha Tate is one of the names on my list. My number 7 was Zhang Weili. I like what you said, Mark, about Zhang Weili not being done and that there's room for improvement. I looked at my list and I was pretty sure nobody there was probably going to go up or down for the most part. Maybe the top 2 or 3, depending on how things end up moving around. But I think Zhang Weili is the one out of everybody on my list that has the potential to be completely different in a year or two, depending on what she does with her career. But as of right now, the accomplishments that she's had in the short time that she's been around, I think are significant. She's had her losses. She's had her redemptions. And I'm more interested to see how far up she climbs from a number 7 spot in the future. But as of right now, that's where I have her. And my number 6 is Joanna Champion. It is hard not to recognize that run, because that was to me like a female Conor McGregor run.
Yeah.
That was some of the most fun I think I've ever had in the women's division. Watching her face-offs, watching her talk shit with her accent is absolutely hilarious. And then she beat the shit out of these girls. These were not close fights. She beat the shit out of every single one of those girls up until she won that belt. And then, eventually we get to the Rose thing, and, and things started to change again. But the run that Joanna had at that point was so significant. Another set of eyes on the UFC, on the on the women's division. And so it had to fall where it fell. So Joanna champion, number 6.
Well, there you have it. Let's see. Our lists are pretty close, which I'm impressed by. And for the folks at home, there has been zero back and forth about our lists. We have all made our lists separately, and this is the first time we're all hearing each other's lists. Okay, for me at number 10, I think, Mark, you mentioned something like this, like my 9, 10 spots and some of my honorable mentions were very tight for me. We're very close. Yeah. Inching onto my top 10 list in the number 10 spot is Miesha Tate for me. She has a lot of gold that people might not realize. She has championship belts in 2 other promotions other than UFC, one called FCF and also Strikeforce. She was a Strikeforce champ. She is 19-9 as a pro, a 68% finish rate. Excuse me, a 58% finish rate. She's been in a bunch of title fights. She's 4-3 in title fights, but she's only defended a belt once, and that was in the FCF promotion. Her biggest win was obviously the one over Holly Holm that got her the UFC strap. She's lost to Ronda twice. She got smashed by Nunes bad. I'm just going to echo things that you guys have already said about her in terms of, I think she scored still a lot of points for me, not just for eventually sticking around enough to win some gold. And in a fight that was the fight was a comeback fight in and of itself. And a great moment for Miesha's career. But Miesha scores trailblazery points for me in terms of being one of the early stars in women's MMA and kind of trailblazing that path for other women to come after her. So she gets onto my list in the number 10 spot. In my number 9 spot, I have Carla Cookie Monster Esparza. I mean, she has a hell of a record. She's 19-7. A higher finish rate than you might think. She has a 42% finish rate. That's mostly because she used her dominant grappling to get a lot of finishes earlier in her career. If you look on sort of the back 9 of her record, she hasn't been finishing anybody lately. She has been in 5 title fights. She's 3-2 in title fights. She has never defended a belt, which is something that has kept her low on my list. She does have 2 wins over Rose Namajunas. She has lost to Joanna. She lost bad to Jung. But, hey, look, she has touched UFC gold twice with years in between, so she certainly deserves credit for sticking around, for toughing it out, for making it back to a title fight and winning. But for me, where other people on my list have scored a lot of points in the eye test, Esparza loses points for me in the eye test because she has never, ever fought with a style that impresses. She has never fought with a style that leaves me feeling like, man, I can't wait to watch Carla Esparza fight again. I hate to say that. It sounds mean. She seems awesome. But and she's on my fucking top 10 list. She's in my number 9. So like I have to defend against her. She can kill me with her fists.
You know what we're going to have to do at the end of this? We are going to have to average out our lists and see what our collective top 10 would shake out to be.
Okay. Nice.
Well, good luck with that math.
Okay, my number 8 is Holly Holm. Holly Holm. Nothing to say about her boxing career and kickboxing career before she got into MMA. But she has had a hell of a career so far. I think I think probably Mark alluded to this. in terms of her career, also kind of like Misha's, is really defined by a single fight of obviously her win over Ronda. Look, sometimes a single moment or a single knockout can establish a fighter's stardom, and this is a case where a single performance kind of cemented her legacy for the rest of her career. For what that fight was, the spot that it was, the moment that it was against the opponent that she was against in the Ronda, that was the Ronda going into that fight. Ronda was the juggernaut going into that fight. That was one of the greatest performances of all time. So, unfortunately, what makes Holm lose points for me in this debate is that she then immediately lost the belt in the next fight to Miesha Tate. And after that, her initial 10-0 run as a pro, she has now gone 4-6 in her last 10 fights. Tossing in 2 more title fights, both losses against JDR and against Cyborg. But Holly Holm still gains a lot of points overall in her career. She's always been one who brings the fight, and she's a consummate professional. So she's my number 8. My number 7, here we go. There's a lot of similarities now. My number 7 is Zhang Weili. Zhang Weili, a newer entrant to sort of the picture of female greats because, she's only been in the UFC since 2018. She entered the UFC. She's gone 7-2 in the UFC overall as a pro. She's 23-3 as a pro with an 83% finish rate. She's an absolute beast. She's beaten Carla Esparza, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and Jessica Andrade. She has lost to Rose twice. One of those fights was very closely contested. But look, Zhang very well may attain a much, much higher spot on this list when it's all said and done. But at this point, this list is not ranking potential greatness. That being said, she certainly scores a lot of points for my eye test alone. She fights and she displays excellence every time she steps into the cage. So that's why she is already on my number 7 spot. And my number 6 spot is Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She is my first person on my top 10 who is an inactive fighter. She's now retired. She went 16-5 as a pro. That is a 76% win rate with a 31% finish rate. She gained the UFC Strawweight Championship, and she put together one of the legendary runs in all of MMA. Not just women's side, but all of MMA. And I think Omar alluded to this, but man, she went 14-0 in her first 14 pro fights, including this legendary strawweight title run, and during which time she was one of the bright spots in the entire sport. I think, Omar, you said something like she was almost like the Conor McGregor of women's MMA, and I couldn't agree more, man. She had the whole boogie woman persona going. She defended her belt 5 times, which felt like she defended it 14 times. And she's been back in the title picture since she lost the belt. Overall, in title fights, she is 6-4. So she has a winning record in title fights, and she's just one of the greats. Okay, so now we have all of our 10 through 6.
Very interesting.
Very, very interesting. Let's see. So Omar said Holm, Conan, Tate, Weili, and Joanna. Mark said Esparza, Andrade, Weili, Joanna, and Rose. And I said Miesha, Carla, Holm, Weili, and Joanna.
So what we have learned here is that I know what both of your top 5 is. You guys don't know what mine is. Since I already have Rose at number 6.
This is true.
I find it interesting that we all put Rose over Joanna. I know she beat her twice, but I wasn't sure if we were all going to do that.
You can't not, especially with the way that she knocked her the fuck out the first time. And then the second fight was close, but she clearly won that fight.
Yeah, I just, in my head, I guess, when I think of, who's the greatest, I think because of Joanna's crazy run that we're just describing, my brain reaches for her before it reaches for Rose.
Sure.
But then when I really had to make a list, I was like, well, I can't do that. So, yeah.
It was very close for me. And, I'm already tipping my hat here. So I guess I'll go let me just go first then.
You're going to go straight through?
I'll go straight in to my
right.
top 5 here.
Okay.
So at my number 5 spot, I have Rose Namajunas. And just like you're talking about, her and Joanna's my number 6, and they're right. And I pretty much got to a point where I'm shuffling names around and trying to figure out my ranking. And I had them right next to each other, and I might have had Joanna above Rose. And I'm like, if they are right next to each other, then I just have to give the edge to Rose. I don't know, because in other points, I didn't do that because it's not like we're comparing current rankings.
Yeah.
Because we are comparing overall greatness. But, I mean, razor close. I'm giving the edge to Rose. I mean, she is, one of the darlings of the UFC and has been so since she won the hearts of many fans in her run on Tough. And also, one of the greatest Rose moments has not been a Rose alone moment, but has been Daniel Cormier's legendary call, Thug Rose! Thug Rose! It's not like he gave her the nickname. That was already her nickname, but just his styling of it. Who did she beat? Was that when she knocked out Joanna?
That was
I think it
Joanna.
was when she
Knocked out Jung?
No, yeah, you're right. No, it
No,
wasn't.
it was
When
Joanna.
she knocked out Wei Lee?
No, I don't.
It was Joanna?
If anybody who's listening or watching
you know-
right now on YouTube who knows with certainty, drop us a comment down below.
No, because that was the last. That was just the last fight. That's been a thing for a minute. It had to have been.
Joanna.
Thug Rose!
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Yeah, it's Joanna.
Okay. So yeah, Joanna is my number 6 and Rose is my number 5.
Yeah.
Keep going.
She's a 2-time strawweight champ. She beat Joanna twice. She beat Jung twice, and she's gone 1-1 against Andrade. She has lost to Esparza twice. So yeah, she's my number 5. Okay, my number 4 is Ronda Rousey. What is there to say about Ronda, man, that hasn't already been said? My goodness. 12-2 on her career. That's an 86% win rate with a 100% finish rate. That is right. In all 12 of Ronda Rousey's professional MMA bouts, she finished all 12 of her opponents in fights that she won. She is the only woman on this list who can boast a 100% finish rate in her wins. She, of course, was the inaugural UFC Women's Bantamweight champion. I don't think she won it. I think they just gave it to her from Strikeforce.
No, she won it. She fought Liz for it.
So it was sort of like a created vacant belt.
Yeah.
She came in though as the champion.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think she defended it immediately.
They
kinda gave it to her.
made. I remember
because
that
they
being a
bought
whole
Strikeforce?
thing.
What about that?
Is that because they
He had a whole
Strikeforce?
press conference and everything.
Kind of similar to Jose Aldo.
I think so. Yeah, she came in as the champion.
You're right.
Thank you. Okay, why is Ronda not higher on my list? Well, first of all, of other names of greats, she has only beaten one person, whose name is Miesha Tate. She beat Miesha twice in her career, once in Strikeforce and once in the UFC. She has not beaten anybody else among the greats, so that loses points for her right there. She lost bad to Holly Holm, and she lost really bad to Amanda Nunes. So she loses points there. And obviously, I mean, I'm not really going to, I don't know how many points she gets detracted for sort of the way she exited the sport. I mean, she took those back-to-back losses, and then she just kind of bowed out of the sport. She was quiet for a long time, and then she went to the WWE and's been wrestling. But in terms of her run, I mean, here's the thing, is that the Ronda Rousey run, more so than Gina Carano, more so than anybody, more so than Joanna, Ronda Rousey catapulted women's MMA to what it is today. Case closed. And for that alone, gains her a ton of points in this debate. Never mind the run that she went on, which was an amazing run in and of itself. She was so dominant. So for that reason, she is my number 4. That being said, my number 3 is Cris Cyborg. I mean, what a beast. You want to talk about dominance? Cris Cyborg on her career, and I believe she's still active. Correct me if I'm wrong. She's 26-2 as a professional. I forgot to pull up her finish rate, but I'm sure it's absolutely absurd.
It's quite high.
Cris Cyborg, if you don't know, Cris Cyborg has a lot of gold. She was only 81% finish rate.
Yes.
She was in and out of the UFC relatively quickly. Kind of had a tumultuous relationship with UFC, but she won the UFC Featherweight Championship. She also was the inaugural Strikeforce Women's Featherweight Championship. She also was the inaugural Invicta Women's Featherweight Champion, and she's also now the Bellator Women's Featherweight Champion. I mean, this woman has so many belts on her wall at home. Notable win among people on this list. She's beaten Holly Holm. Nobody else. But again, the 4 belts in 4 different organizations, the utter dominance. She's only ever lost twice. She is one of the scariest individuals I've ever watched in a cage fighting. She lost her very first pro fight and then didn't lose a fight for 13 years, which is still a lot of years, but not as many as 15. Cris Cyborg, my number 3. My number 2, Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko. Personally, probably my favorite fighter on this list. Y'all know the crush that I have on Valentina. 23-3 as a pro, so just as dominant as just about anybody. 65% finish rate. She's the current reigning UFC Women's Flyweight Champion. She's 8-1 in championship fights. Oh, also, let me just backtrack real quick. Cris Cyborg is 15-1 in championship fights across her pro career. Back to Valentina. Valentina, 8-1 in title fights. She has 7 title defenses in this current reign. I mean, she's putting together, we're in it right now, one of the most dominant and amazing, legendary title reigns in women's MMA ever. And it's still going. She has beat Holly Holm. She subbed Juliana Pena. She TKO'd Jessica Andrade. She beat Joanna. Detraction, she lost to Nunes twice. But look, she's only lost to 2 women. And she's in, like I said, she's in the middle of a legendary run. She's cleaning out the women's flyweight division in the UFC. So for that reason, she's all the way up to number 2. But she did not top my list. It was close, man. It's fucking close. But right now, as it stands right now, my number 1 is Amanda Nunes. 22-5, 2-division champ in the UFC, women's bantam, women's featherweight. She's beaten Valentina twice. And one of those fights was very close. I think they were both pretty close, but I think one of them was razor close. And many people thought that Valentina won. But in the record books, Amanda has the bragging rights to beating Valentina on 2 occasions. They may fight again. We'll see. She obviously completely shut the door on Ronda's career. She also knocked out Cris Cyborg, one of the most exciting bouts we've ever seen. She also knocked out Holly Holm. She also beat the shit out of Miesha Tate. That was hard to watch, to be honest. I think that was at UFC 200. The first half of Amanda Nunes' career, this is where she differs a little bit. She has 5 losses. The first half of her pro career is kind of speckled with losses. 3 times she got finished. But then, a couple years later, she developed into something that we have not seen before in women's MMA. I mean, she unlocked another level, and she put together a truly legendary run, finishing nearly all of her opponents in style. She finished Sarah McMahon. She beat Valentina. She finished Miesha. She finished Ronda. She beat Valentina a second time. She finished Pennington. She finished Cyborg. She finished Holly Holm. She beat GDR. She beat Spencer. She beat Megan Anderson. She lost to Pena and then immediately beat Pena in dominant fashion to get it right back. So, in terms of like one run of dominance, that for me puts Nunes at the top of the heap right now. It still could change. It could be Valentina. It might end up being Wei Li. We'll see. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Very nice list.
Oh,
Great points all around. I enjoyed it.
I am going to say my list from 5 to 1 is exactly the same as Mike's.
Really?
So, yeah.
Would
So
you like
I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole of it.
So you have Rose at number 5, Ronda at 4.
I have Rose at number 5, Ronda at number 4, Chris Cyborg at number 3, Valentina at number 2, and Amanda at number 1. I couldn't put Amanda at number 2. I wanted to put Valentina at number 1 because I prefer Valentina. But the facts are what they are. She's like, if they never fought, I feel like I could make the argument a little bit better. But they have, and she's lost, so I can't.
Okay, Mark at number 5.
So that's it, Omar? You don't want to say anything about your take on any of them?
I mean, a lot of it was that take. I mean,
right.
Rose Namajunas and the Joanna Champion and the Zhang Wei Li, they're all so fluid for me just because Joanna Rose and Wei Li are still fighting, right? Joanna had made such a large mark in the MMA world that it's hard to remove her from that place. But there's still room for that to shift around. Ronda Rousey's another one whose impact was too great. I mean, if you talk about a run, there was literally points where they were making cartoons out of her walking around with people's arms everywhere. Because not only was she finishing people, she was finishing them all by armbar.
Yes.
Like, she would look you in the face, told you what she was going to do, and did it. And you couldn't stop her. It wasn't until she got to the UFC she started doing other crazy shit and knocking people out and all this other nonsense. And I think she started feeling herself a little too much with that and got a little too overconfident.
In her hands.
And fought somebody who actually had hands.
She forgot about the head movement.
I don't think she ever knew about the head movement.
I think also for Ronda became such a massive star relatively quickly. Like, it was quick. Like, over the course of like a couple years, her life completely changed. And in looking back on it, personally, like, I think her body changed. You can see, like, I look and doing this research, seeing images of Ronda in Strikeforce. Holy shit! Ronda Rousey was a fucking animal. She was jacked.
I honestly think it was the level of competition because the reality was Ronda never had hands, but she never needed them.
No, he's talking about physically,
appearance-wise.
appearance-wise.
But what do you mean? Like, she was always fucking jacked.
More and more media. I think she kind of lost her conditioning more and more as her career went on. Because I think she was in more movies and doing more press and more media. When she was in Strikeforce and just fighting, she was a fucking monster.
Maybe. She was always a big girl to me. She always seemed fucking thick as hell. But regardless, she was taking arms home left and right. I don't really care about how she left the sport because MMA fans are dicks anyway, so I don't really think she owed anything to anybody. So I don't really care about that. I will say her leaving after 2 fights doesn't really affect the impact that she had for me.
True.
I mean, she had a legendary run. She took home tons and tons of gold. And then she hit like a new generation of fighter.
Yes.
Holly Holm had come from a different background. And Holly Holm had one job in that fight. And it could have gone left for Holly Holm too. I mean, let's be real. But Holly Holm had one job in that fight. And it was to make sure Ronda Rousey didn't fucking put hands on her.
Here's the difference. Sorry, keep going. Finish.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
A real marker that you have crossed over to become not just a star within your sport, but a megastar and a cultural icon is when little kids dress up as you for Halloween. When little girls dress up as Ronda Rousey, and the only other person I can think of is Conor McGregor. But nobody else in the sport. Not Fedor, not John Jones, not Daniel Cormier, not GSP, not Anderson.
Let's not forget Raul Rosas Jr. dressed up as what's his name? Oh, Robbie Lawler for his birthday one year. Apparently,
Respect.
Okay.
Had a whole Robbie Lawler cake and the whole deal. So your man was really into Robbie Lawler when he was younger. So
Did
Robbie Lawler's on the
make
list
it
of those who made it.
Into Mark's honorable mentions? Oh, wait a second. We're doing women. Holy shit.
Wow.
For a moment, I was the thought
drunk?
just crossed my head. I was like, He deserves some.
No more
honorable
whiskey
mention
for
points.
you.
No more whiskey for me. Oh my god.
Wow. All right, Omar, you want to say anything about your other ones?
Yeah, so Chris Cyborg, Chris Cyborg needs to be on this list because her spot in this sport, I think, is you can't really dispute it. She's been around. She's fucking killed everybody that she's basically come into contact with. And her issues with the UFC, in my opinion, although she lost to Amanda Nunes and lost badly, like it wasn't even competitive, I don't think should be held against her because they took a lot of time out of her career, which I thought was pretty fucked up. They didn't really give her a division to really work with. They didn't give her any women to really fight. And they kind of dicked her around for like 2 years, or I think it was 2 years. And I don't think that should be really held against her, especially because after she left, she's continuously killing girls. Still, now, to this day. Chris Cyborg's a beast, man. Chris Cyborg's a beast, and it can't be denied. I think the only two people now on this list, like Mike has, Valentina and Amanda, are two people that I would argue are just better than Chris Cyborg. Amanda's proven it. Valentina is not in that weight class, so, she won't. They'll never fight, I think, at this point. But even at 135, I don't think that'll ever happen. So I just think Valentina is an overall elite, fantastic, unmatched martial artist. Amanda Nunes has the 2 Ws, but again, we can dispute that. Those 2 specific fights, we can still dispute whether Valentina should have walked away with that win, whether they should have been 5-round fights in some of those cases, and so on and so forth. But regardless, Valentina gets my number 2 spot. She's a beast. She's the killer. She's the queen of 125. She has been, still is. Amanda had to take that belt away and has kept it at 135. She lost to Juliana Pena, but the result of the second fight, I think, far outweighed what is now seemingly an outlier in the first fight, which is, I think, more so why we need that third fight more than ever. But Amanda, again, has done so much damage in those divisions, both at 135 and 145. It's hard not to give her the number 1 spot.
I will say this about Chris Cyborg. I would have been very interested to see her rematch Amanda. To see,
1,000%.
Oh, yeah. Because, that was just a fucking firestorm. I would love to see her rematch and maybe come in with a slightly different approach.
1,000%. When she left the UFC, that was my first thought. I was like, fuck, we're never going to get this rematch, and I wanted it so bad. Just because Cyborg did not fight a smart fight, and I would love to have seen her approach a second time.
All right, Mark, give us your top 5.
All right. So where I've been so far was Esparza, Andrade, Weili, Joanna, and Rose. So my kind of outlier that snuck into my top 5 was my nod to the past, which was Megumi Fuji. She is women's Fedor. Like, she has that record like Fedor had, where it's just like, oh my God, she never lost a fight. Like, her career spanned from 2004 to 2013, so 10-year career. And yes, of course, you could bring up the level of competition in the same way that I mentioned with Marlos Kunin, that maybe it was not quite at the level it was at a few years after that. But I think Fuji's career is so good and so dominant that it doesn't matter. She was 26-3 overall. At one point, she was 22-0 over a 6-year career before finally losing a split decision to Zoila Frausto. She then won a few more before ultimately dropping 2 controversial split decisions to Jessica Aguilar, who's another woman who was very good, and calling it a career. But A, 22-0 over 6 years. B, 20 finishes in 26 wins, 19 of them by submission. And C, and this is the main thing for me of why she ended up this high on my list, no one ever truly got the better of her. In 29 fights, she lost 3 times, and all 3 were by controversial split decisions. So you could argue in 29 fights, no one was ever better than her. And that's an insane level of dominance. And it's honestly a higher level of dominance than really any other girl we're discussing tonight had. Everyone else on this list has been clearly beat at some point in time.
Yeah.
So I had to get her high on this list, and she slips in as my number 5. Next one. Obviously, I have the same top 4 as you guys in terms of the names. I have slight difference in ranking. I debated this for a while.
Okay.
I flip-flopped these like every time I thought about it. My number 4 is Chris Cyborg. When I think about it tomorrow, I might flip it again.
Yeah.
Chris is another one with an insane record. She's 26-2. And like Mike said, her pro debut was a loss. So since that time, she's 26-1, with the only loss being to the GOAT, Amanda Nunes. She has 21 finishes in 26 fights, but it's at featherweight, and that's why she's number 4 for me. We know that the skill level at 145 is just not the same as it is in the lower weight classes. We've seen it with Amanda Nunes and the people that she has had to defend that belt against. We've even seen it in Bellator with who Cyborg is defending the belt against. Yes, Cyborg has beat some great fighters like Marlis Kunin and Holly Holm, but they're not 145ers. They're smaller women that tried to fight her. The only real, quality all-timer at her own weight class that she beat is Julia Butt. And outside of that, as unreal as she is, as dominant as she is, that was kind of my X factor that had me land her at 4. You want to tell me you think she should be 1? I can't fucking hate on you. She's that good. For me, the level of competition at that weight class versus the lower weight classes had her land at 4. And the one I was debating her with, flip-flopping, is Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
She is my number 3. So I'll say quickly before I get to her, I love that we all have Valentina at 2. I thought you would both have her at 4. I really did.
Oh, funny.
Oh no, dude! I was trying to put her at 1. Kidding me?
I love seeing that. I don't know. I just thought she'd be behind Nunes and Cyborg and Rousey. I love seeing her that high.
Yeah.
But my number 3 is Ronda Rousey. In a way, it feels wrong ranking her ahead of Cyborg because I do think Cyborg would have wrecked her if they ever fought. But again, there's weight classes for a reason, and we can only go off resumes, and I think Ronda's is slightly stronger. So just to rattle off some names quickly, Mike kind of made this point, but Ronda Rousey beat Sarah D'Alelio, who was good, Julia Budd, who was arguably Cyborg's best win in her whole career, Miesha Tate, Sarah Kaufman, Liz Carmouche, Miesha Tate again, Sarah McMahon, Alexis Davis, Kat Zingano, and the one random, which is Betchy Correia. And you know what she did in all 12 of those fights? Finished. And do you know what she did in 11 out of those 12 finishes? Finished in the first round.
No, that's who.
It was a stretch of dominance unlike anything we've ever seen in women's MMA. I mean, her fights were over in minutes. No one could touch her.
Seconds.
Girls were broken before they even stepped into the cage. Like, she was just invincible for a while there. And, of course, that's until she wasn't. And she got KO'd by Holly Holm and then returned for an ill-fated ass-whipping at the hands of Amanda Nunes. But everything before that was enough for number 3 in my eyes. I just felt the resume was stronger than what Cyborg, kind of through no fault of her own, is able to have on her resume fighting at the weight class that she's fighting at. Number 2, the unanimous number 2 amongst us, Valentina Shevchenko. Like I said, in my head when I started this, I was like, oh, she's probably number 4. And then when I started really looking at it, I was like, no, she's not. She's number 2. And she is. She has a record of 23-3. She has 15 finishes in 23 fights. She already has 8 title wins, despite her division only having existed for her last 8 fights. So God knows how many more she would have had if that wasn't the case. And most importantly for her, it was her losses. She's lost 3 times in her whole career. The first one was a short notice fight that she took after 4 years out of MMA against Liz Carmouche. She was winning the fight handily, and an upkick cut her eye, and they had to stop the fight. So that's not even really a loss. The next one was against Amanda Nunes, a girl who is at least one weight class larger than her, and who obviously is going to be number 1 on my list and was on both of yours. And that was a decision loss in only Valentina's second UFC fight. And the third one, again, was Amanda in a split that many people scored for Valentina, including myself. So 23-3 is really more like 23-2 without the Liz loss, and both losses are to the GOAT, and one of them might have been a win over the GOAT. So I can't put Valentina any lower than 2, and like I said, I'm glad to see neither of you guys did either. But, I mean, she's beat a string of women. She beat Kaufman, Holmes, she finished Juliana Pena, beat Joanna, finished Jessica I, had a rematch with Liz Carmouche where she was able to avenge that loss by cut, finished Chukagian, beat Maya, finished Andrade, finished Lauren Murphy. Now she just beat Tyler Santos. The resume it stacks up against anyone other than, I guess, the number 1 here. So Valentina is my number 2 all time, and it could change. You never know how the rest of these careers go. But yeah, number 1, it's kind of the gimme of the list in a way.
Yep.
Like we were all kind of touching on. You could make arguments if you want. It's very hard not to put Amanda Nunes at number 1. She's 22-5, 17 finishes. What Mike pointed out is an interesting point that I wanted to make as well, which is that she does have some questionable losses early in her career. She was TKO'd by Alexa Davis. She lost to Sarah DeLelio. She was TKO'd by Kat Zingano. Recently, even the Pena submission loss didn't look great. But it's the run between the Zingano loss and the Pena loss that has her at number 1. That's where she kind of changed into who she was as a fighter. That was her prime. And she beat Valentina twice. She submitted Misha. She knocked out Ronda. She knocked out Cyborg. She knocked out Holm, and plenty of other women in that stretch as well. Like, you can't not put her at 1. She became a 2-weight champion. She's defended both belts, which no one fucking does when they become a 2-weight champ. She has 10 title fight victories. And when it comes down to it, if you're 4-0 against the girls I just ranked 2, 3, and 4, I certainly can't rank you any lower than 1. So, Amanda Nunes, the women's GOAT.
Woo!
Well done, boys. Well done.
That was fun.
I liked it. Everyone did their work there. It was a solid list.
Yeah, man.
I enjoyed it.
Let's see. Nunes and Shevchenko both have 7 title defenses. Ronda also has 7 title defenses.
No, wait. Amanda's got to have more than 7 because she has 10 title wins, unless I fucked up my count.
It's just because...
Oh, because the win-backs and...
Yeah,
sorry, yes.
win-backs. In terms of defending belts. I made a whole category of like, how many title defenses that they've had. Let's see.
You know what I did forget? I was under the impression, I thought I had remembered Valentina coming in as the flyweight champion when they first opened up the division. But they did tough. And that was the whole Nico Montano thing. And they stripped her of the belt when she fucking never made weight, never did anything.
Yeah.
And then they gave it to Valentina and Joanna, or the winner of Valentina, Joanna.
Yep.
And then it just went from there.
Yep.
It felt like one of those things where they were like, Valentina has it.
Wait, they gave the belt to Nico first?
Well, she
Nico
won.
was the
she
champ.
won tough.
So that tough season was to crown the champ as an intro to the new division.
Yeah. They brought
And
in
Nico
basically
never
like,
made
they
it to
brought
a
in
fight.
everybody from Invicta basically at 125.
Yeah.
And basically just had it tough with it. And Nico was literally the dark horse of the entire show. Then ended up winning. And then fucked her whole career up.
And it was
like
supposed
overnight.
to be, if I'm remembering right, it was supposed to be her and Valentina. Like, Valentina was supposed to be getting the shot.
Right.
And Nico just had so many issues that they were like, all right, see you later. And it became Joanna moving up to try to step in.
What an absolute waste.
Yeah.
I expected a lot more from that girl.
Another thing of note, Zhang Weili has the exact same record as Valentina Shevchenko. They are both 23-3, which is interesting to me.
That'd be some fucking fight.
Yeah, man.
See, that's what I mean about how people can move on this list. Like, say that fight happens and Weili wins.
Oh, my God.
Where does Weili go on this list?
Skyrocket.
Like, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah, this was fun. This was very fun. So we have the top 4 was not the order, but the top 4 people were unanimous, which makes
That's
sense.
right. That's right.
Yeah. The only flip-flop was me having Rousey over Cyborg and you guys having Cyborg over Rousey. Did you guys debate that? Or you felt clear about Cyborg over her?
Over Rousey?
Yeah,
It was I went back and forth a lot.
you did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I did too.
I
That
went
was
back
tough.
and forth about
I-
Cyborg and Rousey, Rose and Joanna.
Yep.
I went back and forth a bit about Zhang. And then sort
Yep.
of my bottom of the list / my honorables was all sort of like a jumble.
Yeah. I had to figure out where I wanted to put Fuji, but I felt like I went with 5 just because Weili, Joanna, Rose had kind of like Weili had the losses to Rose. Joanna had the losses to both of them. Rose, even though she beat those, she had these losses to like Esparza and some other ones. So I felt like I would put her in above that trio. Obviously, I wasn't cracking the top 4, but
I wish Fuji had won any gold somewhere. I do.
It's tough.
I mean,
man.
how was she 22 and
It's so
over 6
interesting.
years and didn't win a title? Did they just
Because
not have
the-
titles? I
I
heard you
guess
say that
not.
earlier, and I was like, "Are we sure?"
Yeah, I guess either they weren't recorded or they didn't have titles in the organization she was with, and then the one time she was supposed to get that Bellator title, she had won that tournament, and then she got a split decision loss and didn't get the title. Had she won that fight, she would have been in my top 10 for sure.
Right? Yeah. No, I know that. I know that Bellator one. Yeah.
Mark, rattle off your honorables again.
My honorables were
Home.
so like if I had to go from 11, I think my order would have been Coonan, Kaufman, Tate, Home.
Okay. That's fine. I'm recording for posterity. And Omar, yours were Carano, Andrade.
And someone else. He had 3.
two others.
Or no, he had 4, I think.
Esparza and Fuji.
Right. Yeah, we all had very similar lists, man. Very similar lists.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine and Mark's were like removed by one spot in some senses. Like,
My outlier was Marlos Kunin, and
Right.
Mark's was Megumi Fuji.
And was I the only one with Andrade cracking my 10? Yeah, I was.
yeah. Like you had Esparza 11, I had her. No, you had Esparza 10, I had her 9.
Yeah.
You had
Yeah.
Weili 8, I had Weili 7. You had Joanna 7, I had Joanna 6. You had Rose 6, I had Rose 5. So it was like very similar.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I want to try to average these out later and make a show. In the comments of this, I'll put all 3 of ours and then what the average show ranking would be.
Okay. Well, that being said, drop us a comment down below. Let us know who you think your all-time GOAT is, and give us a little quick ranking yourselves if you're watching this. Drop a comment. If you don't want to do top 10, rattle off maybe a top 5 or even a top 3 all-time. What do you guys think? We want to know. Okay. Let's go to our next segment. Let's find out what's going on in the headlines from Omar with our segment Inside the MMA Sphere.
All right. So first, shout out to Lorisenko for becoming the first, I believe still now the first UFC, a woman making her UFC color commentary debut. So it'll be a nice addition. I think Laura has been on top of shit for a minute. As good as, who's the other woman? Why am I blanking on her name? My wife loves her.
Megan O'Leary?
Megan O'Leary. As good as Megan O'Leary is at what she does, Lorisenko definitely brings another flavor, another positive flavor to that team. So I'm happy to see that she's getting her shot. Kind of wish the card wasn't at 1 a.m. for her to get her shot, but I guess it is what it is. Next on the list, Julio Arce out of the Cody Garbrandt fight at UFC 285. Apparently, Julio Arce needs surgery on his knee, so Arce might be out for quite a bit of time. UFC veteran and current BKFC fighter Jimmy Rivera becomes a police officer in New Jersey.
Wow.
Looked like it was something that he always wanted to do or thought about doing, and then kind of got to the point where if he didn't do it now, he was going to regret never having done it. So, watch out. Don't fuck with him. To be honest, chances are he probably fuck you up before he shoots you, though. Very possible. Very possible. Next on the list, Conor McGregor in the news again. This time for a completely different reason. And your man got hit by a car. Apparently he was riding his bike on one of the mountains or however those trails work over in Ireland. And he got hit in the back of his car, or in the back of his bike with a car. The glare, according to the driver, didn't see McGregor at all. McGregor went on the shield of the car, fell off. His whole ass was exposed by the time, everything was all said and done from all the road rash. So he's good. But that definitely happened. I kind of felt bad for that old man because once he started going live and that guy looked shook. He looked really, really shaken up. Yeah, I'm sure him being on Instagram Live too was probably not helping him. But it looks like it all ended well. Conor McGregor's good. The old man's not going to get in any kind of trouble. It looks like Conor McGregor's chill with it. It seems. So all ends well, but he got hit by a car. So interesting.
He probably didn't have time to be mad at the guy. I think he was literally like, "Thank God I'm alive right now."
I don't know. I've seen a couple people get hit by a car in New York City. They're pretty fucking pissed. Yeah. Next on the list, Bella Mir, the daughter of Frank Mir, is the first NIL ambassador. She is currently a freshman at the University of Iowa, representing the Iowa Hawkeyes, and a member of the Iowa women's wrestling team.
I saw this. I had no idea what it meant. What does the NIL ambassador thing mean?
Mark does this better.
It is it stands for name, image, and likeness, and it's related to the fact that now college athletes can have sponsorships, whereas for years they could not, and they can be contracted, and receive payment. So the UFC has not done anything with it yet, I guess, and she was their first choice. So she is literally sponsored by the UFC and kind of has a. It's not always this case, but I think in her case, it's kind of like almost implied that there's like a future contract in the offing.
Wow, that's amazing. Good for her.
I can tell you right now, Bella Mir is a scary motherfucker, though. If you ever watched a video of her, she has her dad's jiu-jitsu, and she is not a tiny girl. That girl is thick as fuck, and she is strong.
Yep.
So, like, she's all mass, kid. Like, there is nothing dainty about that woman. Like, she will snap you in half. Yep. So she could be a real problem in the UFC for sure, just off of her physicality alone. Not to mention her skill set. Frank Mir, for as kind of shit as his hands were, we could argue about that. His jiu-jitsu was disgusting. His hands were not that bad, but they weren't even close to the best.
They got better as time went on, but they were never the strong suit necessarily.
His jiu-jitsu.
Did they get better? Did it get better? Because some of his later fights, his striking was fucking terrible, man.
Yeah, it never became a weapon, but like early on, he couldn't really even hurt you with his hands. As time went on, he could.
Yeah, okay, all right. I guess I give you that. But as time went on, especially later in his career, watching him in a stand-up fight was just...
Yeah, Bellamere 3-0 as a pro.
No, she's a beast. She's an absolute animal. Definitely watch out for her. If you do have a chance to go look her up on YouTube, I would definitely recommend it because her technique is solid. Really, really good. Next on the list, the proposed title fight between Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana will not be happening in UFC 285 in March. Nunes apparently wants Juliana Pena and Irene Aldana to fight for a number one contender spot, and Juliana Pena told her to go fuck herself. So the UFC at this point is going to pivot and have Irene Aldana fight Raquel Pennington, headlining UFC San Antonio on March 25th. It does not look like it's for a title. I wouldn't imagine it would be. But nothing is official as of yet. These are all rumors and speculation. But it does look like Amanda Nunes is not trying to fight Irene Aldana right now. So there's that.
Wait, so you said the fight would end up being which?
So right now they're looking at Irene Aldana versus Raquel Pennington to headline UFC San Antonio.
I still think it should be Pena versus Pennington. I don't understand the Aldana sudden inclusion. It doesn't make sense to me, but whatever.
It sounds like Juliana Pena doesn't want to fight Irene Aldana is the whole thing.
That's why I said it should be Pena and Pennington. That's what I've always thought it should be.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I don't get how Aldana got into this mix necessarily.
It makes you wonder if Pena turned down Pennington too. I think she's just trying to go for the Nunes fight, and UFC's probably like, well, fuck both of you. Here's Irene Aldana versus Raquel Pennington.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get into some fight announcements, and then we can get into these next week's cards, this upcoming week's cards. Minyang Zhang is out against his fight with Tyson Pedro. Pedro will now be facing Modestas Bukauskas at UFC 284 on February 11th. Ian Gary versus Song Keenan has been added to UFC's 285 event on March 4th. Mike, how do you feel about that?
All right.
Oh, Mark. Sorry. Mark, how do you feel about that?
Stupid.
That's
Why?
That's why I asked. Because it's random. It's completely random.
He's already beat Song Kinnan's. Like, we're past it. Like, I don't know why we have to do this again. This should have been the one where it was like someone who was significant. Especially
at a pay-per-view. Give this kid somebody to fucking fight.
Like, he was asking for Brian Barberena. Like, we couldn't do that? Why? Like, I don't... And even if we don't want to go that high, there's plenty of people in between. Like...
That's why I asked, because I thought it was fucking stupid. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page here.
Oh, it is. It is.
All right, next on the list, Mahmoud Muradov versus Abu Sufyan Magomedov, added to UFC Vegas card on March 11th. Ricardo Ramos versus Austin Lingo has also been added to that card on March 11th. Tony Gravely versus Victor Henry, also added to that card on March 11th. That actually sounds like it could be a really good fight. A really good fight.
Yeah, that could be. I agree. That's a decent shot for Tony Gravely to make some noise.
I actually think Victor Henry lays out Tony Gravely in that one.
I kind of do too.
Next on the list, these next three fights are for the April 8th card, UFC 287. Big announcements were made by Dana White a couple days ago. So it starts with Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. I mean, I shouldn't have to explain how fucking nasty that fight is. Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal. Big spot for Jorge Masvidal, I think, more than Gilbert Burns. It's almost expected for Gilbert Burns to win this fight. Jorge Masvidal has had a losing streak for a bit.
Dude, did you see the opening odds?
No.
For the fight? Gilbert Burns opened...
Let me guess. Gilbert Burns minus 700.
What?
Dude, he opened at minus 600. I thought that was fucking nuts.
I mean,
he's now down because people saw the money. Now he's like minus 450 because people saw Jorge at whatever the fuck he was, and they were like, well, I might as well bet. So
Jorge had to be plus 5.
I think it was plus 5. Exactly.
Okay.
I think it was minus 6 plus 5. To me, I feel like that should have opened at like minus 300. Like, I couldn't believe it opened that wide. Like, I get it that like Jorge's been losing some fights, but like fuck, like that's crazy to me.
I think the real issue is his recent fights have shown a lot of vulnerabilities, and what they don't remember, which is what I'm not really looking at the Usman or even the Colby fights for this Gilbert Burns fight. I'm looking more at the Damian Maia fight for this Gilbert Burns fight. Yeah. And as good as Damian Maia has always been, his ability to not submit Jorge Masvidal back then leads me to believe that he's going to be even tougher now to submit from Gilbert Burns' end. Doesn't mean Gilbert Burns won't be on his back for fucking 25 minutes, though. Let's not get that twisted. But I just don't. I think there's a better possibility for Gilbert Burns not to actually end up with a submission finish based on what I've seen from Jorge Masvidal's past.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I think I'll be picking Burns, but like if you got a bet in on Jorge at plus 500, I think that's a pretty good fucking deal.
Especially to go the distance at minimum. I mean, I guess that's to win, but I wonder what the prop bets are for him to go distance and things like that.
I wish it was 5. I really wish it was 5.
And last
5
on
rounds,
this
I mean.
little list. Oh yeah, he said he ain't doing 5 rounds unless he gets paid more money. He ain't doing 5 rounds. So yeah. Last on this April 8th announcement was the rematch of Alex Pereira, the new middleweight champion, versus Israel, the last style bender Adesanya. I have one thing to say for that. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go.
Yep. I love
You
it.
already know I'm riding Team Izzy. I don't even care. It is what it is. If we go down, we go down together.
Speaking of odds again, Izzy's the favorite.
Really?
Wow.
I guess it's not shocking
I mean,
considering
he won a
he was
majority of
winning.
that fight. Yeah, he won a majority of that fight up
Yeah.
until he got knocked the fuck out, I guess.
It's close, but he's like minus 150.
Wow.
Izzy.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's Pereira?
I think it was like plus 130 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that rematch. I'm very excited
I'm
for
curious
that
to
rematch.
see by the time that fight comes if Pereira's the favorite. Like, I'm curious how many people bet on Pereira
Tell you
when they
this.
see him as a dog.
If Izzy could touch that chin earlier than he did in the first round,
Like 10
that
seconds
last fight,
Yeah, man. Yeah.
10
I know.
seconds.
Pereira might-
I know.
Come on.
He's fucking live. He's live.
Pereira
as
might
shit.
fucking fold, man. You might see that man go accordion on everybody's ass.
Yeah. Only problem is if Izzy wins, what do you do then? We got to do it again?
I know.
I mean, let's be real. If they did it again, wouldn't you want to watch that?
Yeah.
Those
but
are some
you-
great. Those are some great fights.
Fight Pereira at some point in time.
If they're gonna make Davidson, Figueiredo, and Moreno do it, they'll make Izzy do it if it makes him money. All right, next on the list, Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen. This one is a straight up banger. You cannot miss this one. This one is going to be headlining UFC Fight Night on April 15th. This is a featherweight bout, obviously with Arnold Allen being in the mix. But for those of you who didn't know what Max Holloway was going to be doing, he is sticking around at featherweight for the time being. Last on my list is Brian Kelleher versus Journey Newson. That's been added to UFC's April 29th event, their Fight Night event. And that, gentlemen, is all we have for you.
All right. Well, boys, let us now look ahead to the professional violence we have on tap this weekend. Let us begin with the UFC. This weekend, Saturday night, or going into Sunday morning, because this Fight Night card is starting very, very late. I don't know why. It's in Nevada, so why the hell?
Me and Omar were talking about it before. I think I figured it out.
Tell me.
So
Tell us.
the prelims of this card feature the finals of the 4 weight classes of Road to the UFC, which was a tournament for Asian prospects. And the prelims start at 10 p.m. our time, which is like 11 a.m. or I forget now if it was, I think it was 11 a.m. or 12 a.m. 12 p.m. Depending if you're in like China, Japan, Singapore, that area. It's the middle of the day. So if they started those prelims like at 7 over here, it would have been like 8 in the morning over there. So I think they were trying to avoid that and at least have it be daytime for people there to watch.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not watching these fights live. I just can't.
No, fuck me.
It's not gonna happen.
I love me some Derrick Lewis, but he's going to come on the TV at approximately 3 to 3:30. So, yeah, I'll be sleeping.
Well, all right. Let us begin. We're going to talk about, I believe, 3 of the fights on this main card. Before we do any fights or fighters that you guys want to spotlight for the listeners.
I'll leave the first one on the card for Mark because that's his boy. So we'll leave that one there. I will say Duho Choi is on this card. I don't know if we.
Oh, I thought we said we were going to do that fight. Yeah, we're doing
I didn't
4
see him on
fights.
the list, so we'll leave Duho Choi for a breakdown.
Yeah, that's my fault. I left him off the list. I didn't mean to do that because you did ask to do Duho Choi. Yeah, we're doing 4 fights.
But Jun Young Park is on this card as well against Dennis Tululian. Tululian?
Yep.
You got it.
I think that was right. That's a banger, guys. That's going to be a banger. It's probably not going to be the most technical fight, but it will be a scrap. I do enjoy Jun Young Park. He's a heavy-handed man. And Dennis Celullin has shown some promise. So it'll be an interesting scrap, I think. So that's definitely one to look out for.
Agree. Yeah, I will spotlight Tatsuro Taira, who is opening this card, which is a little bit of a wild spot to me, considering the level of prospect that he is. They have a different prospect on the main card, which is Yasaku Kinoshita, who is a Japanese prospect who's, I guess, got a little bit of hype behind him. They put him on the main card, I guess, to try to give him some shine on this card that has Asian flair. But you would have thought they would have gave that spot to Tatsuro Taira, considering we've already seen how good he is in the UFC. So I don't know why they put him so early in the card, but they did. He's fighting a debuting fighter in Jesus Aguilar. But definitely tune in and see Taira most likely do work there. And then, yeah, as I said, you got 4 weight classes that are having the finals of tournaments for Road to the UFC. Flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight. So they're all on this card. And then, yeah, let's get into these 4 bigger fights.
Okay, let us start in the featherweight division. Duho Choi versus Kyle Nelson. Duho Choi, maybe most known for the absolute war that he had with Cub Swanson back in 2016. He is 14-4 as a pro. He's a 31-year-old out of South Korea, of course. Of his 14 wins, 12 have come by finish. And he himself has never been subbed. His opponent, Kyle Nelson, the 31-year-old out of Ontario, Canada, the Monster is his nickname. He's 13-5 as a pro, 9 finishes, and most recently coming off back-to-back losses at the hands of Billy Q and Jai Herbert. Omar, let me start with you. Give us your take and your pick of Duho Choi versus Kyle Nelson.
I like Duho Choi, man. I like his style. I love the way he fights. What I'm hoping here, his last 2 fights have been competitive until they weren't. And he's taken a good amount of damage just in his last few fights. Up until that point, he was pretty flawless, man. Pretty disgusting. His striking and his accuracy were really on point. And then he started getting into these crazy-ass brawls. And as much as we enjoyed them, I think they took their toll on them. What I am hoping is that his last fight was December of 2019. I'm hoping there's been some recovery there. I'm hoping he's taken some time off. And I'm hoping that we see the best version of Duho Choi, because the man was a real prospect. I thought he had real potential to go far, and he didn't reach that potential, once we got into that little bit of a losing streak. But like we've seen when we talked about our top 10 women of all time, a lot of them have run into those little bits of losing streaks. Doesn't mean they can't become great. Doesn't mean they can't become champion. I still think Duho Choi has that ability. So I'm hoping to see Duho Choi really style out here against Kyle Nelson, because I think he can. I think this is the perfect type of matchup for him to really put something together. I don't think we're going to see Kyle Nelson going for double legs on every single minute of the fight. I think he is going to come in there. He is going to scrap with him. And I think Duho Choi walks away with the victory. I'm going to go KO round 2.
Mark? All right, so Choi's the favorite. He's minus 185. Kyle Nelson is plus 150. Choi is finally back after fulfilling his duty in the Korean military. Things did not end well for him before he left. He went 0-3 on his way out. But they were pretty much all wars. He still kind of showed some signs. He's still only 31 years old, so he should still be in his prime. As Omar said, maybe the layoff helped in some ways. He had some violent fights. He's got to be pumped to be back, you would think. And frankly, I think he's been given a matchup to make sure he shines, and I think he will. I think that, as Omar alluded to, Nelson will be willing to strike with him. And I think Choi puts a big pace on, and he has big power. And I'll say he ends things by knockout in one of the first 2 rounds. Give me round 1.
Dude, Duho Choi, I have always loved watching him fight, man. He is a Korean firecracker at that weight class. I'm rooting for him. I'm going to pick with my heart here. I'm going to want him to get right back in the win column and have a y'all must have forgot kind of fight. I'm going to say Duho Choi is going to come back, and I think he's going to finish Kyle Nelson in the second round with strikes. Let's go.
Let's go.
Okay. We have in the heavyweight division Marcin Tybura versus Blagoy Ivanov. So Tybura, the 37-year-old out of Poland. Heavyweights are always old.
Always.
Always.
Which won't change when we get to the other card we're going to do.
Yes, it's true. Yes, even more so. Tybura, 23-7 as a pro, 9 knockouts, 6 subs added to that, coming off of a win against Alexander Romanov by a majority decision back in August. Blagoy Ivanov, the 36-year-old out of Bulgaria, 19-4, 1 no contest, 6 knockouts, 6 subs, well-rounded record. Also coming off of a win against Marcos Rogerio de Lima back last May. Mark, give us your take and your pick.
All right, so pretty tight odds, maybe as expected. Tybura is minus 135. Ivanov is plus 115. Tybura has some big advantages in his corner here in terms of the size. He's 4 inches taller, and he has a 5-inch reach advantage. And I think those can play a big factor for him. Blagoy is so tough and kind of works a game that really makes it hard for guys to get their own stuff off. But with Tybura being the quicker guy here and being able to combine that size and that reach, plus the pace that Tybura can keep, I think it's going to be enough to be able to be winning this fight on points, despite the way that Blagoy's kind of able to nullify dudes. So Ivanov's chin is good, so I don't think he goes away, but I think Tybura can do enough to at least take 2 of these rounds. So give me Marcin Tybura UD.
Omar.
I have, and I say this wholeheartedly knowing this man has a winning record, that he won his last fight, but I have like zero confidence in Blagoy Ivanov. Like zero. And with that, I believe that Tybura has a lot more potential, and I think is just as well-rounded, if not even more well-rounded than Ivanov is. The other thing is, Ivanov hasn't been finished since 2014, where he got choked out by Alexander Volkov. I think 2023 is going to be a fucked up year for Ivanov because I think he gets ground and pounded into the fucking skull of the earth. Round 2, TKO, Marcin Tybura. Let's go.
Okay. Omar thinks Tybura is going to finish Ivanov for the first time in his career by strikes. I mean,
correct.
Look, Blagoy's a tank, man. And but I'm going to echo the same sentiment. I've never been super high in his skill set. I like Tybura better as a heavyweight. I'm going to similar to Mark's pick, I'm going to say Tybura by UD because he's going to be the bigger fighter, the better fighter. I think he's going to shine in this fight against Ivanov. I think Ivanov's going to be a punching bag for Mr. Tybura.
I wish I knew who the referee was because the way I see this happening is it's going to be a lot of volume on the ground that Ivanov is not going to have an answer for, and the referee is going to have to call it. Otherwise, we're just going to watch somebody just continuously get pummeled. So it depends on the referee how early this gets called or if it doesn't get called at all.
Ivanov's always so good at like kind of holding you on the fence and like nullifying you and throwing like short shots, but I just don't think that's going to work against Tybura. I think he's like too big, and like I said, he's faster. I don't know. I think it's a tough matchup for Ivanov.
And I think Ivanov, like we were talking about, because he's well rounded, he's able to kind of put the fight where he wants. Tybura can do the same thing.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't like where he's at when it comes to an exchange with Ivanov, he's just going to change levels and take him down. Yeah. And I fully believe Tybura's ground game is better than Ivanov's is, and I think his top game specifically is a fucking problem. Yeah. And if he gets on top of him, I don't think Ivanov's getting up. I just don't.
Yeah. I'm not a huge Tybura guy, but I like him a lot in this fight.
Same.
Okay, co-main event for this UFC Fight Night in the light heavyweight division, Da-Un Jung taking on Devin Clark. So Da-Un Jung, the 29-year-old out of South Korea, 15-3 as a pro, 1 draw added to that. 11 knockouts on his record, coming off a knockout loss. His first ever knockout loss at the hands of Dustin Jacoby. He will be standing across Devin Brown Bear Clark, the 32-year-old out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. 13-7 as a pro with 4 knockouts, coming off of a loss as well, a TKO at the hands of Azamat Murzakanov. I'm butchering that, excuse me. Omar, give us your take and your pick of Da-Un Jung versus Devin Clark.
So Da-Un Jung's nickname is Seda, and it means to be strong in Korean. So very to the point, because that man's hands are something else. I, like Ivanov, have zero confidence in Devin Clark. I don't see any path of victory here for him personally. I guess there is a potential to take him down and work from the ground. I see Da-Un Jung stuffing every single takedown attempt that there might be thrown by Devin Clark. And I see Devin Clark getting knocked out again. I think that last fight might have been that switch. And Da-Un Jung is like the wrong person to follow up a KO loss with, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to go Da-Un Jung by knockout, and I don't think Devin Clark comes back to the UFC after this next fight.
Ooh. Mark?
I could see that being accurate. Jung's a pretty significant favorite. He's minus 245. Devin Clark is plus 200. Another one here with a size difference. Jung is 4 inches taller. He has a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Devin Clark is just one of these guys who constantly has a performance that makes you say, like, hey, maybe Devin Clark is making some strides. And then you see him again, and you're like, oh, no, he's not. So, I don't know. He's tough to evaluate, but I think Jung is just the much more dangerous and varied striker. And I'm not sure that Clark can have enough success with the wrestling to turn the tide in this matchup. Like, Jung is a well-rounded fighter. I think there's enough wrestling in his bag to make sure that a good chunk of this fight takes place on the feet. And like Omar said, the man carries power, and Clark gets hit clean a lot. So I think this is going to go south for Clark eventually as the fight goes on. It could even be earlier. I'll say it's later. I'll go Jung with a round 3 TKO.
We are unanimous in this one. Completely agree. I think Devin Clark at this weight class, I wonder what he could do if he cut to middleweight. I mean, he's only 6 feet tall. Who was it that broke his like maxilla bone or like broke his teeth? Remember that?
Was
that Anthony Smith or
no?
Was it Rakic?
Anthony Smith choked him out.
Was it Kute Laba?
It was ugly. That was ugly.
Oh, I do kind of remember that.
I
don't remember who it was, but I do remember that.
I can't.
Well,
think
he lost that fight, so
yeah, he lost that one. Yeah. I'm going to go Da-Un Jung knockout, round 1.
Yeah, it was Kute Lava. Yeah,
it was Kute Lava. All right, main event time. In the heavyweight division, Derrick the Black Beast Lewis taking on Serghei the Polar Bear Spivak. Derrick Lewis really needing no introduction. He is the UFC knockout king. The 37-year-old out of Houston, Texas. His record stands at 26-10 and 1 no contest. Out of his 26 victories, 21 have come by way of knockout. He is, however, coming off back-to-back losses at the hands of Tai Tuivasa and Sergey Pavlovich. So, Derrick Lewis looking to get back in the win column against the surging Serghei Spivak, the 29-year-old out of Moldova. His record stands at 15-3 right now. 7 knockouts and 6 submissions to his record, probably most known for his relatively strong grappling skills among the heavyweight ranks. He's coming off back-to-back wins over Greg Hardy and Augusto Sakai. Mark? give us your assessment and ultimately your pick of Lewis versus Spivak.
I will do that, but something also just hit me that I have never realized before.
That I'm very handsome.
Doesn't Derek... That what?
That I'm very handsome.
No, I always realize that. Doesn't Derrick Lewis's chest tattoo say Knockout King?
Oh, does it?
I'm pretty freaking sure. And he's always had that tattoo.
I think you're
To
right.
actually become the UFC Knockout King
Oh my God.
is absurd.
I never noticed his tattoos, to be honest.
Did anyone Google it?
I'm looking at it right now. You're absolutely right, but I never
It
noticed
does, right?
just now.
Yeah. It just hit me. I'm like, wait.
It says
Wow.
Knockout King. Damn.
Like, what are the fucking chances? That's insane. Fucking manifested it. Huh. All right, to the fight. The Knockout King is an almost 2-1 underdog. He is plus 190. Serghei Spivak, minus 230. Thought Lewis may be a dog. Didn't think he'd be that much of one. These two are both big boys, same exact size, basically. Lewis has a 1-inch reach advantage, but that's pretty negligible. Of course, he's on a slide recently. He's been losing. It looks like maybe his time toward the top of the division is passing him by, but I will say this. Serghei Spivak is not the same type of fighter that has been beating Derrick Lewis. Like, Lewis lost, well, first he lost to Cyril Gahn, who's from the future, then to two guys who aren't afraid of his power and who possess the power on their own end to put him out, which, of course, being Tuivasa and Pavlovich. Serghei Spivak ain't that kind of fighter. He has power, but he wants to take you down and get on top of you. And Derrick Lewis historically has done very well against grapplers. Like, he defends takedowns pretty well. He's unreal at powering his way back to his feet. And Spivak is a big boy, so maybe he can hold him there. But it's no easy task. And on the feet, Spivak gets hit. Like, he's been put out before. And if Derrick Lewis lands, this whole fight is going to change. And not to mention, as good as Spivak has looked, the guys he's beaten in this run of 5 out of 6 wins that he's on are Carlos Felipe, Jared Vendera, Alexei Oleinik, Greg Hardy, and Augusto Sakai, who's a shell of the Augusto Sakai of like 3 years ago. Yeah. So not one of those dudes is on the level of a Derrick Lewis. Even a Derrick Lewis who may be on the back end here. So I'm going to go with Derrick Lewis again. Like, he's a decent underdog here. Maybe I'm not realizing that he doesn't have it anymore, and I will after this. But I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I think this matchup favors Derrick Lewis. I think that he looks really good physically. I think he's saying the right things, and I'm going to choose to believe he can get this done. I will say Derrick Lewis, round 3 knockout.
Boom. Omar, it's your turn.
Listen, I sent you guys a picture of this new Derrick Lewis. This motherfucker looks like he's lost like 25, 30 pounds. He looks crazy. I've been on the Derrick Lewis train. I have no intention of getting off the Derrick Lewis train, especially not for goddamn Serghei Spivak. I can tell you that. I do think Serghei has more tools than Derrick Lewis, but I do think that Derrick Lewis has enough tools in his toolkit to keep himself up off the ground and to land something that will cause Serghei Spivak to not be awake anymore. I'm actually really excited for this fight because if we do see a lighter, faster Derrick Lewis, because if Derrick Lewis can get the speed advantage here and continue to keep his power, it's a bad man. That might be a new Derrick Lewis that we might see going on here, but that's a bad combination. So I hope he can put it together. I hope he's really been taking the time to train. It looks like he has. So yeah. I'm hoping for the best. As far as the pick, I'm going to go with Derrick Lewis, KO, round 3. No, round 5 in true Derrick Lewis form.
Wow. I like that. So you're saying round 5 knockout. Mark, what'd you say?
3.
Round 3. Folks, how should I say this? This is going to be a y'all must have forgot night for Derrick Lewis. Serghei Spivak, he's a big boy, but I completely echo Mark's sentiments that Derrick Lewis has a good track record against strong grapplers, and I think this is going to be no different. I think he's going to defend the takedown well. He's going to be slippier than Spivak thinks. And Derrick Lewis is the kind of guy, he only needs to ding you once. And I think he's going to find Spivak's chin at some point. I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to say Derrick Lewis is going to weather some grappling storms surprisingly well. He might look gassed at some points, but in round number 4, I think he's going to find Spivak's chin and finish him by TKO.
All of us on the dog. Love it.
Let's go.
Love it. Let's hope we're right.
Yeah, let's go. All right, folks.
Be nice to see it.
Let us now switch gears and hop over to the Bellator side of things this weekend, February 4th. Bellator 290 Bader. Did I say that right? Bader versus Fedor 2. Fedor. Before we get into, I think we're going to break down how many fights we got here. I think 3.
Yes.
Once again, any fights or fighters that you guys want to quickly spotlight for our viewers?
This main card is kind of a beast here.
Yeah, so they're only calling 3 fights the main card. I'm not sure why that is. I know this is on CBS, so maybe it was it's only a 2-hour window, so they did 3 fights, something along those lines.
Oh my God!
I don't know if the undercard's on CBS, but it's 9 p.m. on CBS, so at least on Saturday night we can watch this one since we can't watch the UFC. But they tried to go pretty big, and the prelims have names throughout. Jalen Bates versus Jornel Lugo is a really nice bantamweight fight early on the card. Darian Caldwell is back fighting. He's fighting Nikita Mikhailov, which is a solid fight. Grant Neal and Carl Albrechtsen is a solid light heavyweight scrap of guys who have done some really solid things in their careers. Steve Mowry's back. He's fighting Ali Isaev. Lorenz Larkin and Muhammad Berhamov, which that fight already happened. I actually forget. There was some foul that ended that fight, so they're doing it again. Neiman Gracie's on the card. He's fighting Dante Shiro. I'm not exactly sure why that's the matchup, but he's on there. So there's a lot of names. Oh, I skipped over Henry Corrales fighting Akhmed Magomedov. Like, there's a lot of names that are worth tuning into on these prelims. So Bellator went pretty deep. And sorry, Omar, if you wanted to highlight any of these, and I kind of just listed them all, but go ahead.
You definitely did. It's totally fine. This is actually one of the better Bellator cards, I think, from top to bottom that they've had in a little bit. So I'm actually pretty excited to watch not just the main card, but actually all of the prelims too.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be good.
Okay. Well, let us hop into it. Our first fight we're going to break down is Sabah Homasi versus Brennan Ward. So let's see. Homasi, the sleek chic, the 34-year-old, fighting out of East Brunswick, New Jersey. 17-10 as a pro, coming off back-to-back wins under the Bellator banner. Brennan Ward, Irish Brennan Ward, 34 years old, out of Waterford, Connecticut. 16-6 as a pro, also coming off back-to-back wins. Omar, why don't you take this fight first? Give us your quick pick.
MMA is a fucked up sport, isn't it? If you told me Sabah Homasi was going to be one of these big guys in Bellator and was going around wrecking people in Bellator and shit after having watched him in the UFC, I would have told you you're out of your goddamn mind. And yet, it's 2023, and here we are talking about Sabah Homasi because he just goes out there and wrecks people in Bellator, and it's absolutely fantastic. I would argue there's no other sport in the world where somebody kind of sucks one day and is like really fucking good the next. I've never seen it in any other sport. With that being said, Brennan Ward is not a slouch. This is not an easy fight by any stretch of the imagination. This will be a scrap from bell to bell. I don't think as both of these guys are finishers, but I think as much as many finishes as both these guys have, I don't think they're going to be able to finish each other. I do think this is going to go the full 15 minutes, and I will say Sabah Homasi walks away with the decision. Yes, unanimous.
Yes.
Okay. A little wider than I thought. Sabah's the favorite at minus 195. Brennan Ward is plus 160. I love this matchup. This is the matchup that I asked for after their last fights. I just said they both fucking go in there and bang every time. Can we put them in there together? And Bellator must have had the same thought, so I love that. This is going to be fireworks for as long as it lasts. It has the potential to be the craziest fight of this whole weekend if they do what they usually do. They're basically the same size. The reach is the same. Homasi's taller by 2 inches. There's really not a lot to break down here. Like, these guys just go in there looking to hurt someone. I guess Brennan Ward could always wrestle, but I'd also guess that's not going to be in the cards on Saturday. I think they both come out swinging. And I think Sabah may be the one who's a bit slicker out of the two. So I'm going to say that he's going to be the one who lands a good big shot first, and that Ward is the one who's hurt first. But Homasi has had a tendency to get a little bit wild and a little bit reckless when he hurts you, and that's kind of where Brennan Ward lives. So I don't know if this is the fact that I've kind of always been a fan of Brennan Ward and that I'm happy to see him back, but I'm just envisioning that happening. You know, Brennan Ward gets stung, he stays in it, he starts throwing back. Homasi opens up a little bit too much trying to end it, and Brennan Ward is actually the one who finishes the thing. So give me Brennan Ward round 2 knockout.
Dude, I'm a Brennan Ward guy. I like Brennan Ward. I think he's a fucking stud. 16 wins, 11 knockouts on his record. Add 4 subs to that. He's got a lot of firepower, and I like him in this matchup against Homasi, even though Homasi obviously has that, UFC pedigree in his background. And like Omar said, he's coming to Bellator and he's doing work. I'm going with Brennan Ward in this matchup. I think he's going to knock him out. I'm going to say round 2.
Real quick, where the fuck did Brennan Ward go? Because I see a big gap here from 2017 to 2022, and all of a sudden he comes back and he's laying people the fuck out. So where did he go?
Completely strung out on drugs and had to have interventions from family and friends and got his life back together.
But he's a stud.
So he was on drugs while he was fighting professionally like that?
Probably.
I think it started in his last couple fights and then got bad during all the time that he was off. I think that's why he was off, because it got bad.
And then did rehab and then came back?
I believe, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now I kind of want Brennan Ward to win. I mean, dude, first of all, to come back at all to that sport after taking that much time off because of something that essentially debilitates your body, like, I can't imagine the drugs were doing any kind of service to his body. So to come back, work your way back up to a point where your body is capable of fighting, and then taking a fight and fucking winning by TKO twice.
Yep.
It's pretty goddamn crazy to me personally. But
yeah, for sure. I thought he had just retired until he came back, and it was when he came back that Bellator did like kind of a little special on it, where he sort of was talking about what he had been through, and yeah, it was pretty crazy.
I gotta look that up after we're done. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, let's move on. Next fight, Johnny Eblen versus Anatoly Tokov. So Eblen, Diamond Hands, undefeated, 12-0, 8-0 under the Bellator banner. He's 31 years old, fighting out of Boca Raton, Florida. 5 knockouts, 1 sub added to that. Most recently coming off of his unanimous decision victory against Gegard Mousasi. He will be standing across another very formidable opponent in Anatoly Tokov, the 32-year-old out of Russia. He's 5'10", 31 wins, 2 defeats, 17 knockouts, 7 submission victories on his record. He's riding a 7-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Mark, let's start with you. Give us your assessment and your pick of this fight.
Yeah, I will go ahead and say this is probably the highest level fight happening this entire weekend, and it has absolutely zero buzz. Johnny Eblen's the favorite. He's minus 250. Anatoly Tokov is plus 210. I guess maybe the zero buzz is because it kind of came together late. This was originally supposed to be Vadim Nemkov and Yoel Romero in this co-main event spot, and then when that fell apart, they kind of scrambled and had Eblen and Tokov get on here so they could have another big fight on this CBS card. But this is a big fight. Anatoly Tokov, in my opinion, as I've said plenty of times on this show, has been the second best middleweight in Bellator for a while behind Gegard Mousasi, and just for some reason that I couldn't really understand was not getting a title shot. I guess now you'd have to say he's the third best after what Johnny Eblen just did to Mousasi, but point remains. But yeah, he's been due for a title shot for a while, and now his day finally comes. Only thing is, instead of it coming against Mousasi, who he maybe could have looked to work some wrestling and grappling advantages against, considering how well-rounded Tokov is, it comes against a guy in Johnny Eblen who may be even more well-rounded than Tokov. So I think it's definitely a tougher matchup stylistically for him. It kind of takes away some of the advantages that he could have tried to play, because as Johnny Eblen has showed us, he can do it all. He even showed it all within that one single Mousasi fight. You know, he's dangerous everywhere this fight goes. So I'll be really interested to see where Tokov looks to fight this fight. Like, does he still believe he's the better grappler, even though Eblen has the wrestling credentials that he has? Does he just look to strike because he probably is kind of the cleaner striker there, and he maybe, I mean, statistically speaking, he carries the bigger knockout power for sure. But Eblen has kind of been teasing some pretty big power himself. Like, it looks like some of his shots land pretty big. So I don't know. It's tough I just feel like I haven't seen enough of Johnny Eblen to like have a great sense. Like, we just saw this. I mean, we saw him against John Salter, but before Salter, it was nobody's. And then it was John Salter, okay. And then it was just this crazy performance against Gegard Mousasi. So I'm kind of like, I don't know how to evaluate Johnny Eblen perfectly at this point. He's bigger. He's 3 inches taller. He'll have a 1-inch reach, so not huge. It's tough to pick. It's tough to pick. Before seeing that Mousasi fight, I would have picked Tokov in this fight. I've been a fan of Tokov's game. But after seeing what Eblen just did, it's really hard to pick against him. So I do think this is going to be close. Tokov's very good. If he could ever get on top, he's super heavy on top. He has big ground and pound. I just don't know if he can get there on Eblen or if he could maintain top control on Eblen. So I guess I'm going to go Eblen here. He's never lost. He just showed so much in that Mousasi fight. I do trust his cardio more than I trust Tokov's, and this is a 5-rounder. So I'll say that Eblen maybe takes it over more as the fight goes later, and that his wrestling becomes more effective then. So I'll say 48-47 Johnny Eblen, but I think it's a close, hard-fought fight.
Okay, Omar, take it.
So I think that breakdown was pretty clear. I think the one thing for me, I do think Tokov is more well-rounded. And maybe that's because we haven't seen enough from Eblen. That's a really good point. It's hard not to ignore what he did to Mousasi, though. I mean, there's not a ton of people who can say they've dominated Gegard Mousasi in a fight, but he carries that around with him now. Tokov is a beast, though, and he has more than double the experience when it comes to mixed martial arts competition. We could argue the resume. I don't know fucking any of these people, really, on his record. But at the end of the day, he's wrecking people. Like, these aren't even like decisions. Like, he is wrecking people left and right on his resume. So, I would need, like Mark said, I would need to see more of Johnny Eblen, see really what his full game is against somebody of this caliber. And I don't really have enough information on him to really make that decision on his side. So I'm going to go with Tokov, man. I'm going to go with Tokov. I'll give Johnny Eblen the benefit of the doubt that he's tough enough to get through the fight. But it just seems like to me Tokov would have an answer to anything that Johnny Eblen would have to offer. So I'm going to go with Tokov by decision, unanimous.
So you both have gone decision here. I'm going to be the one who goes out on a limb. I think Johnny Eblen runs into a massive test in Tokov and comes up short this time. And I think he gets his first knockout loss at the hands of the man who finishes more than half of his fights. I'm going to say that he knocks him out I'll say round 2.
Damn, now I feel like I'm jealous that you guys both pulled the trigger on Tokov and I didn't. When I've been fucking saying for 2 years that he should be getting a title shot. All right. I like it. I'll tell you what, imagine Tokov is a Fedor guy. Imagine he wins the belt and then Fedor wins the belt. That'd be a hell of a night.
That'd be cool. That'd be very cool. All right, moving right along to the main event of the evening, Bader Fedor 2. So these two fought back in January of 2019 with Ryan Bader defeating Fedor Emelianenko by TKO in round number 1 at the 35-second mark.
Yeah.
So, real quick, Bader, the 39-year-old out of Tempe, Arizona, 30 wins, 7 defeats, 1 no contest. Of his 30 victories, we have 12 by knockout, add 3 subs to that. Fedor wins many points. Speaking of greatest ever, if and when we have the greatest ever either men debate or greatest ever heavyweights debate, Fedor certainly will have many, many points on our lists. Fedor is the 46-year-old out of Russia, 40 wins, 6 defeats, 1 no contest, 16 knockouts, 15 submission victories. He is coming off back-to-back wins over Quinton Rampage Jackson and Tim Johnson. Okay, Omar, start us off here. Give us your assessment and your pick of Bader versus Fedor.
So, it is that 35-second loss is quite annoying to watch because Bader's striking is I hate it, right? So to watch him throw this ridiculous ass jab to knock down and eventually knock out Fedor is annoying. That can't happen again, right? Like, we can't lose via jab a second time to the same man. So I'm going to assume this fight is going to go the way the first fight I ultimately thought would go. I do think Fedor has enough takedown defense to stop Ryan Bader's takedowns. I think Ryan Bader tries to implement speed and movement against Fedor more than power. I think that works all fine and well, but I do think that if Fedor catches Ryan Bader, I think Ryan Bader goes down like a sack of shit. So I'm going to go with Fedor KO round 2.
Wow,
I don't like Ryan Bader. I've explained this to you guys many a times.
That's true. That's true. All right, Bader's pretty big favorite. He is minus 340 to defend his title. Fedor is plus 260. Here we go, baby. My man Fedor, the legend, the heavyweight GOAT in my book, with a chance to walk off into the sunset as the Bellator heavyweight champion. And to be honest, I don't care that it's Bellator. I don't care that their heavyweight division is one of their weaker divisions. I don't care that it's against a career light heavyweight in Ryan Bader. If Fedor manages to pull this off and claim the Bellator heavyweight championship in his retirement fight at age 46, that's fucking awesome and only enhances the heavyweight GOAT argument for Fedor. With all that said, it's a lot to ask. These two have fought once before, as we said. We all know what happened. 35-second TKO for Ryan Bader. And that was without Bader even using his wrestling. So the matchup is an uphill battle for Fedor for sure. As for the size, these guys match up pretty evenly, at least on paper. Bader's 2 inches taller, but Fedor has a 2-inch reach. Granted, now that Bader has committed to heavyweight and kind of said he's leaving light heavyweight in the past, I'm curious to see how heavy he comes in. I wonder if it's more than we've seen. I do think it's the right career move for him. I think heavyweight Bader seems to take shots way better. You don't see him wobbling on random shots the way he does at light heavyweight. So I don't know if it's something about having to cut and dehydrate himself, but he always seems to take shots way better at heavyweight. His speed helps him in this division. I think it's the right place for him at this point in his career. But at the same time, he's 39 years old. Like, he was 35 in the last fight. So 39 to 35 is a much older Ryan Bader. And, of course, Fedor's 46, which is ancient in MMA terms. But, like, he's been this version of himself for a while now. And he's kind of been doing fine with it and used to how he needs to fight. Like, Bader is a little newer to being older. Like, he's a little bit slower. He's a little bit less reactive. So I actually think that compared to their last fight, that Bader's aging is more of a significant factor than Fedor's aging, because I kind of view Fedor largely the same. And I do think he can get this done. Like, and obviously the books and the bettors think he's got a shot too, because I thought these lines could have been a lot wider, and it seems like Fedor is at least getting some respect. So I like to see that. And the man's hand speed is still there, and his power's still there. Like, that combo that he just knocked out Tim Johnson with in his last fight was fucking chef's kiss, legendary prime hand speed from Fedor, which was always one of his best weapons. The danger is absolutely still there. And Ryan Bader is absolutely still a guy who can be timed and can be clipped. Can Bader KO Fedor again? Sure. His chin is not what it once was. That's for sure. Can Bader come out and wrestle fuck Fedor? Yeah, I think maybe he can. And to be honest, I think he probably should. Not saying that's like a route to definitive victory, because we all know the judo and the scrambling of Fedor. So it would be interesting to see, what magic he still has in those hips at 46 years old. But I do think the smart path is for Bader to just come out and wrestle a lot. But if you've ever watched this show, you know what I'm picking, and it ain't that. Bader comes out, he's too comfortable, he wants another knockout, and he gets fucking comboed into next week. First round knockout. The champion now and forever, Fedor, the last emperor, Emelianenko. And by pure chance, I just realized as we were, an hour into this show, that I didn't have my Pride hat to say Pride Never Die for Fedor, but I fucking have on a Pride t-shirt, Pride Never Die.
Well, so you said Fedor knockout?
Round one.
Round one. Omar, what'd you say?
I had Fedor knocking out round 2, I believe.
Okay, this is one where I'm not going to pick with my heart. And I'm going to pick with my head. Fedor is too old. I know that he is 46 years old. I know this is something I know. Or at least it's something that I've read on the internet and I trust it. I think Bader has too many ways to win over Fedor at this point in Fedor's career. If this was 10, 15 years ago, oh my God, I would be, doing the sign of the cross and praying for Ryan Bader. At this point, I mean, Bader, I keep second-guessing myself. Bader is no spring chicken himself either at 39 years old. But at this point in their careers and their recent bodies of work, I'm going to go with Ryan Bader. I'm going to go with Ryan Bader by TKO, because if Fedor is going to lose, that's how he's going to lose. So I will say that it's not going to be a 30-second loss again, but I will say that Bader is going to knock out Fedor towards the end of round number 1. But Emelianenko is still going to get a standing ovation by everybody in that arena.
No, let's hope he doesn't get glovered.
What? Everybody leaves?
Fucking rude, fucking Brazil. Like, I get it. They were in their bag. Both of their champions walked away with nothing. So I get it. They were upset. But real dick move there. Y'all knew Glover was going to retire. We all knew it.
Yeah, nobody commented from Brazil to explain. I wanted some comments.
Well, boys.
I should mention as well, real quick, Ryan Bader knocked out Fedor with a left hook, not a left jab. So I just want to make that little correction there.
I just messaged you guys in our chat the rankings averages for our women's.
How'd you do it?
I just did it real quick.
Yeah, but we didn't. We would have to say where we ranked our honorable mention people to figure it out.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I just kind of threw a random.
Oh, you just gave them all 11s?
Like, I gave Carla a 12 for somebody. I don't know why.
Okay. I mean, it's still interesting to see. So you were doing this while we were doing the show? Damn, you're not paying attention to the show.
Just real quick. Did it multitask.
Interesting. Like it.
You know,
That's cool.
Fedor, if there's one thing Fedor needs to do in this fight that he didn't do in his last fight, he needs to put his fucking hands up. This thing where he walks around with like bare hands.
He ain't doing that.
Dude, he always does, man. His hands are at his fucking hips. Always.
I get it, but that's why he lost to Ryan Bader in the first round.
It's because they're so fast. But yeah, now they're not quite as fast as they once were.
I need him to actually look like he's trying to block something. Something. You can't let homeboy keep touching your chin like that if your chin's gonna just snap back and forth. So hopefully he does a little bit more hands up, because I know that like old man shit is what he does, but we need him a little bit tighter.
Omar, I'm just seeing your text that you hear an echo from me from like 2 hours ago. From 1 hour ago. Are you still hearing it?
I don't know. It's there. I'm sure you'll hear it, but whatever.
Sick. Awesome. Good news.
I think we did it. Did we do it?
Did it, boys.
We did it. We did it.
Boom.
Guess what I have?
You made a trivia.
I have a trivia.
Hey, 79 episodes, baby. Just shy of 80. Let's go.
Let's hear it.
Okay. It is a Fedor trivia.
Let's go.
That's appropriate. That's
when Pride fell apart. I am not saying his very next fight after Pride, because there was a couple randoms. When he came to fight in the U.S. at Affliction, was the first fight that he took against A, Brett Rogers, B, Tim Sylvia, C, Andrei Arlovsky, or D, Fabricio Verdum?
Now, this was for the promotion called Affliction.
Affliction. When he came to the U.S. post-Pride ending.
I'm going to go with C, Andrei Arlovsky.
Affliction was not very, long-lived, right?
Very short.
Very short. But I remember their dumbass ring.
What was so bad about the ring?
It was some cheap ass looking white and black boxing ring. It was as basic as it got. Fucking Affliction.
They had good events though.
I know. So what were the options? I know.
Yeah, what were the options? Because now I think that was his last one.
Brett Rogers, Tim Sylvia, Andrei Arlovsky, Fabricio Verdum.
So this was Fedor's first U.S. show?
Yes. I don't know about ever, but post-Pride, yes.
Verdum was 100% Strikeforce, so he's not even in the conversation.
Yes.
I think Arlovsky was the last dude he fought in Affliction.
I remember those fights. I can remember all those fights. I'll say
I'm gonna go with Tim Sylvia.
Going
B,
Sylvia?
not C. Yeah, I'm going Sylvia.
Then I'll go Arlovsky. I think it's
the
Arlovsky.
answer is
it's Arlovsky.
Tim Sylvia.
Oh,
Boom!
2 fights in Affliction. First one was Sylvia. Second one was Arlovsky. Then he debuted in Strikeforce against Brett Rogers, and then he lost to Fabricio Verdum.
The Arlovsky one gets played over and over again, though, because he knocked out Arlovsky in midair.
Yeah. Dude, his 2 Affliction fights were choking out Tim Sylvia in like a minute and then knocking out Arlovsky in like 2 minutes.
dude.
Yeah.
I almost forgot about the Tim Sylvia one, actually.
That's how legendary Fedor was, man. He was a fucking legend.
He was a beast, man. That's why the Fabricio Verdum thing was such a big fucking deal, because even at that time, you didn't think Fabricio could actually do it.
Yeah.
And
what's
the
crazy is that he
craziest
was
thing
such an undersized heavyweight.
Oh, significantly. I mean, then
that's why what happened next. Like the Verdum one was him getting caught. And it was like you couldn't believe it, but it was like, well, he was winning, he got caught in triangle, he fucked up, whatever. And then when he lost to Bigfoot Silva right after, it was like, wait, what? He's losing to Bigfoot Silva? But it was because Bigfoot Silva was fucking twice his size. Like he couldn't get away.
Yeah, well, Daniel Cormier killed him, so it's possible.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely possible. Plenty of dudes have killed Bigfoot Silva.
It's true.
And I would guess Prime Fedor would have killed Bigfoot Silva as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Bigfoot Silva's like back in the headlines. Is he like doing like a boxing fight?
It's
No,
his
he
last.
wants to fucking do the slap boxing shit
He
now.
wants to do the slap boxing.
Because he hasn't had enough
missed
concussions.
that. I missed that completely.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Fucking someone needs to advise him
Poor guy,
to not
man.
do that.
Poor guy.
What, the same people that have been advising him to continue to fucking take fights? Yeah.
I mean,
Hold your breath with that one.
yeah. I meant to do a cheers to Fedor and good luck.
Let's get out of here. Hey, enjoy
Let's.
all the
Great
fights this
episode.
weekend. Fun one once again. Drop us a like. Drop us a comment with your rankings of all-time MMA ladies. Enjoy the fights. We'll see you next week. Any parting shots, boys?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right, folks. We'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Peace.